Hey guys, welcome back to this lecture series. So today I am joined by Dasha. Hello, Dasha. Thank you so much for
Hi.
joining me today. So we are going to touch base on all things gut health. This is Dasha's expertise. So I'm going to kind of take the floor away to her. I'm just asking her, what is your background? What do you do? And why are you so good at what you do? So
Alrighty. Well, my name's Dasha. I come from a background, my undergrad was in biology. I went to UMass Amherst, and then I got my graduate degree in nutritional epidemiology from Tufts Nutrition Friedman School in Boston. From there, I became a registered dietitian and completed my dietetic internship at the VA here in Tampa on James A. Haley.
nice. I didn't
um,
know that.
and then from there, I just started my online coaching business as well. My area of expertise, you could say, although I really don't believe in anyone ever being an expert in something, is gut health. So right now I coach my clients in specifically helping athletes with digestive issues. I created a core perform protocol, which allows them to lower their inflammation in order to increase and optimize their performance in the gym.
Yeah, so just like your kind of experience with that, like for you, so like why did you choose like registered dietitian? Why are you so interested in gut health? So
Yeah, so this actually might be helpful for your students as well. Freedom that a registered dietitian gets you, first of all, in terms of business and credentials, someone will always be able, you will always have a job. It's kind of like job security. Someone will always hire you if you're a registered dietitian. Whenever you're working with brands, whenever you're working with really anyone, I do consulting as well. So I work with like New York Times best-selling authors, and I help them write their nutrition section of their diet books, basically. So
nice.
I do that. Yeah, and I do dabble in as well. Since I do come from Friedman, our background is very research heavy. So I have 4 publications now under my name as well. So I have a lot of clinical research, community, a lot of different types of research experience. And so my story specifically, comes from gut health because I was diagnosed with celiac around 3 or 4 years ago. I always struggled with digestive issues. And then I was diagnosed with celiac, and it was just a miserable journey. And now, afterwards, just being in the bodybuilding industry as well, learning how much inflammation in the gut actually affects your performance is crazy. In order to be able to cut or bulk, optimally, you need to have good gut health. Your inflammation in the body needs to be lowered. So when I created this protocol, basically what I did was I took all the micronutrients responsible for carb metabolism, fat metabolism. I pulled out those micronutrients and made it in a really easy to follow, like green, yellow, red system for my clients, in order to make sure that while we're eliminating a lot of their foods, and we're actually pushing in all these micronutrient dense options that will enhance their metabolism, and thus making sure that we're fortifying them with all these anti-inflammatory nutrients throughout the way. So I've had clients like lose 10 pounds of water, like straight water, in the first week after starting this. And it just goes to show how much we hold without even realizing it.
Turn your passion into this fitness business. So like obviously like your story with celiacs and everything obviously drives you some type of inspiration to like want to help people, because it sucks like being bloated all the time. Kind of like my way with like on the nutritional side of dieting, right? So it's like I'm inspired because that impacted me so much, and now I want to help other people. So like, did you kind of have the same process?
Yeah, so my process was a little bit different. So I was really fascinated in the gut because when I was doing research, I actually knew, like, because of all the research that I was doing for my master's thesis and in graduate school, I kind of saw the future, right? Like when you're in research, you know where the money's getting invested and you know where the next 5 years are going to be based off of what the latest research is saying, right? So when I saw that opportunity, I was like, when was this, 5, 7 years ago? I was like, gut health is going to be the next thing. Like, I know it. And lo and behold, like it really was the next best thing, right? So I really focused on learning all about gut health, about the mitochondria, how to optimize those two systems for increased ATP synthesis, and just overall performance enhancement.
Yeah, I definitely understand. Like, totally my focus in research is like metabolism, like what systems are like different athletes using. So like when you speak about like metabolism and like mitochondria, like I totally get you because I kind of live the same world, but now towards like different dieting interventions. So like I don't know what like your research experience is, but Physique Lab is kind of focused on, hey, like how can we help people not only lose weight, but do it in a way that is sustainable, enjoyable, and like not gonna like wreck your metabolism. So kind of on the same gear, but like I really like your like investigation into GI health because I really struggle with this as well. Like I've been like on and off like inflammation, like hard stomach, like it's
We
literally
all struggle with it, right? Like we
everybody.
all have a gut.
Everybody's like, oh, this is so like, it's just normal, like being inflamed all the time, like I'm just carb sensitive. It's like, no, like there's probably something that you're eating that's causing some type of reaction and like inflammation, right? So
Right.
this is your expertise, so I'm gonna let you talk about that. I know a
Yeah.
little bit just from like my own personal symptom and experience, but
As you guys saw, I am Dasha. My business is called Fit with Dasha. You can find me on fitwithdasha.com. My main kind of acronym that I use with all my clients is SPEED. So you want to speed up your gut and metabolism by enhancing your gut health. And these are SPEED, the acronym is what I use to help them remember it. So you can find me at Dasha Fitness. And as I mentioned, I'm a registered dietitian, nutrition researcher. My background is in nutritional epidemiology. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically the study of like, it's big data sets of the study of how nutrition affects disease overall, right? So I'm sure you guys have slammed that epidemiology like findings before in the past. So the first thing we're going to start off with is the bucket analogy that I like to use. Basically, I like to call it your stress bucket. And over time, there are different things that can cause more stress and add more stress into your bucket. Your bucket will stay completely filled, completely fine, until it starts to overload. And when it starts to overload with stress is when you start to feel the symptoms. So you start to feel bloating, you start to feel gas, you start to feel lethargic, you have brain fog, hormonal, you have acne, you have other hormonal issues, you have an inability to lose or gain weight, etc., etc., etc. Everything that you can think of, look back at your bucket. Okay, so your stress bucket really controls how much symptoms are going to exacerbate. So what we want to do is lower this stress in all the ways that we can in order to optimize our performance, right? So things that can add to the bucket are the 5 speed pillars. So these 5 pillars are sleep, personal stress, environmental stress, exercise, and diet. All of these things can add more stress into your bucket, or they can actually be tools to decrease stress out of your bucket and lower the inflammation in your body, allowing you to optimize your performance and speed up your metabolism, right? So let's start with the first one, sleep. We know that sleep causes more physical stress, which causes circadian disturbance, hormone imbalance, then causing lack of bowel movements, irregular appetite, increased cortisol, all causing worse sleep and then kind of perpetuating this awful sleep cycle. So super easy ways to modify your sleep for gut health. Trying a weighted blanket, making your room pitch black, listening to sleep meditation, avoiding afternoon caffeine, increasing your light exposure in the day, making your room cool, aiming for 7 to 6 hours of sleep, or 7 to 9 hours of sleep, turning off electronics, sticking to a sleep schedule. You can read all of these, you can screenshot it, whatever you want to do, but these are really great ways to modify your sleep in order to increase your gut health. The longer and the more restful you are able to have in a night's sleep, the better you're able to perform. And I'm sure you guys know this, but it goes hand in hand with gut health as well. The other thing I like to say is that if anyone has cortisol imbalances or high levels of stress, this is super, super important to get your sleep in check first. It's the first pillar of gut health for a reason. Everything else doesn't matter if your sleep isn't there.
Yeah.
You're going to feel like crap, okay? You can have a crappy diet and you can have everything else good and you will feel fine, I promise. But if you don't sleep, you're not going to feel fine in anything else.
I think like a big one here is like sticking to a sleep schedule, because like if you go to bed, let's say at like 8 o'clock one night, and then you're staying up till 11 the other night, and then 1 o'clock in the morning the next night, and then we're gonna try to go back to bed at 7. It's just not gonna work out too well. Your body's gonna be super confused all the time.
Yeah, and we see this a lot too with night shift workers. So if you guys ever type in night shift nutrition into PubMed, you'll see right away, like there are a lot of studies showing that they have a lot of problems with their gut health and their hormone balances. And that's because they're not sleeping on a schedule.
Yeah. And like just from like personal experience, if I get like crap sleep, like I'm automatically like my stomach's like I don't feel flat. Like I feel more bloated, like
Right.
just from like a regular person like shooting in here.
Right. So in summary, we all know the next one that we're going to talk about is personal stress, right? So sleep was the first in speed. P is going to be personal stress. So personal stress causes psychological stress, causes anxiety, panic, worry. All of those things trigger the ENS system, your gut microbiota dysbiosis, and increases your gastric acid levels. So this is super important because as you guys know, the gut-brain axis, the vagus nerve is very, very sensitive to stress and just in general hormonal imbalances. So stress is something that we really want to focus on. Personal stress, there are different ways. So as I mentioned, the vagus nerve. So if stress is something that causes constipation for you, for example, there are ways to stimulate the vagus nerve, things like laughing, singing, crying, humming. I like to say to my clients, like, go in the shower, get in your car and just sing and holler like Beyonce, like let it all out. And really it'll help to stimulate your vagus nerve. The other things that you can do are to meditate daily, seek counseling, removing toxic relationships, creating that night routine. Everything listed here really will help to lower your personal stress and thus improve your gut health.
I just have a question about this because a lot of people use exercise as a way to kind of give time to themselves, right? So is exercising, high intensity exercise, like worsening gut health for some people, would you say?
Yeah, so that's a really great point. And I will touch upon that because that's one of the pillars. That's how important it is.
Okay.
So working on personal stress is one thing, and then exercise is another. You need to find your other outlets of personal stress in your life. And that's why I give you 10 ways, right? Because listen, like maybe exercise is your way to outlet some of your stress, but you really need to find a healthier alternative to exercise. Maybe you just modify the way you're exercising in order to decrease that stress. Again, it's about all of the pillars and decreasing what we can where we can.
Yeah. And like, especially like for exercise, like maybe making like doing yoga, like that's a form of exercise and it's like going to relax you. Like
Yes, and we will get there. You're jumping ahead
I'm
of the
so
pillars.
excited, Dasha. Like my mind's blown right now. Okay.
So this is personal stress. Now let's go into I'll skip over this case study for the matter of time. We can go back if we want to later. But 10 ways to modify your environment for gut health. So after personal stress, the SPE. E is for environmental stress. So just like we were just talking about mold in the house, you want to inspect your home and office, especially in Florida. It's going to be really muggy and wet, and then your house is going to be prone to that. So doing that, cooling off on hot days, that's something that a lot of people forget about, but that is called heat stress, right? And it comes from our environment. Avoiding using lawn care chemicals, cleaning out your AC filters, making sure there's no dust, using a HEPA air filter. That's what I have set up in my house. My first two things that I set up for a healthy home for your gut and for your health are a HEPA system. HEPA is for the air, and then a reverse osmosis system. That's for the water. So Tampa is notorious for poor quality air and water. So definitely setting one of those systems up in your house is a great, great alternative. Again, the mechanism all really has to go back to increased cortisol, increased inflammation in the system. Again, that causes more gut permeability, changes your gut microbiome, allows for dysbiosis to occur, because once we have that lowered immune system, there's more opportunity for pathogenic or opportunistic bacteria to overgrow. And then that also decreases your gut motility as well. So again, environment, you don't think about it often, but it does play a huge factor. I can't tell you how many clients come to me with H. pylori or candida. All of these are opportunistic bacteria that occur with maybe mold and then present themselves as allergies. And so,
say, like, how would you know if you had these things, like, as a person?
right. So that's why, as a registered dietitian, I can order you a stool sample and I can make sure, and we can go over the results of something like that. I use the GI map. And that allows me to see, like, do you have parasites? Do you have candida? Do you have other fungal or yeast infections? Do you have H. pylori? Do you have like E. coli or salmonella that maybe you don't even feel in your body? Like, you don't have any symptoms, but like 3 weeks ago, you had a random case of like diarrhea for 2 days and you thought nothing of it, but the bacteria is still there in your gut and you're just like sitting there with it, right?
That's weird. Never thought of that.
Yeah. So that's super helpful. And we can go back to, again, to the case studies, but we're now on to the second E, which is exercise, like you were asking about. So again, just like you suggested, practicing yoga is a great way to do it. Decreasing the intensity of your lifts, not going to failure, obviously, taking a lighter load, making sure that you have more reps in reserve, going for guided walking meditation, really working on that 4-7-8 breathing, I like to say. So that breathing would be inhaling for 4 seconds, exhaling for 7, holding for 8, and then repeating a few cycles. The other thing that I want to say is that exercise, as you know, if you've ever gone for a run and you get those cramps, it is directly related to your gut health. And the reason why, there are a few mechanisms that happens as a result of. One of them is being increased or decreased flow to the gut. So as there's less blood flow to the gut, less nutrients, there's also less water, less hydration. It just starts to cramp up. That's one mechanism. The other one, which is they kind of think this is it, is like the actual running is organs moving, right? And so they're irritating and they're getting more inflamed and causing that chronic beating is causing more inflammation. So swapping something like running for rowing, maybe using a bike, that might help with your gut symptoms as well.
Like like incline walking, it's like really low impact. So yeah, you guys don't have to run to, like, number one, improve your gut health, and two, like, if your goal is like fat loss or not even fat loss, even just like maintaining a healthy heart, like, you can walk and improve that too. So like, a lot of people associate cardio with something really terrible, like, oh, I gotta run, I gotta do rowing or like high intensity, but it's like, hey, like, just go on a walk. So a lot of people don't think of that either.
Yeah, for sure. So again, exercise, if you over exercise, physical stress, increased cortisol, same exact name of the game. You're just filling up your bucket, increasing your permeability, allowing for those endotoxins to leak into your system and cause more inflammation systemically, which is why, like, you might get acne or you might something else. Like, it's happening in other parts of the body, but it's all rooted at the gut sometimes. Last but not least is diet. The D in speed. Tips for this: staying hydrated, eating less processed foods, consuming adequate fiber. So not too much and not too little. Some people do really well on different types of fiber, right? So maybe you're having too much fiber from your vegetable sources and you need something like a soluble fiber instead to help bulk and excrete the stool. So that's another one. The thing that I see most common in bodybuilding, for females at least, and most likely probably for males as well, is eating enough calories. So under eating and chronic dieting has this cyclic cycle. So it slows your GI motility. Again, that will make you more constipated, which will make you more bloated, gassy, nauseous, and then make you eat even less. And so you're stuck in this cyclic cycle where it's like, I feel so gross, I can't eat. I can't eat because I feel so gross. So after like a long dieting phase, really working up, this is the importance of a reverse diet and not stopping when you get uncomfortable, because you need to push past that. Other things like history of eating disorders or anything like that, those have been shown to, and just like history of eating disorders or a chronic dieting, those have been shown to be linked to SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. The reason being, again, is you're constipated, your bacteria there is fermenting on that food that you're eating because you're not going to the bathroom to push it out. So as it grows and grows, again, you get SIBO, you get all these bloating, indigestion, gas, nausea, all these symptoms. Now you're overgrowing, and sometimes it just keeps reoccurring because maybe your immune system, maybe you lower your stress in other ways in your life, and your immune system is like, you know what, I can battle some of this. But it'll just keep coming back. When your stress and your bucket piles up again, it'll come back and it'll come back. And that's why it's so important to work with a professional who is qualified in treating this, that can really get to the root cause and understand what is causing your GI problems. How can you optimize it and eliminate it so that your bucket is completely empty and you can tolerate stress from your exercise and recover optimally to improve your performance.
And I guess I just have a few questions too. So like, let's say someone has all these like issues and they're like constantly bloated, like, is it fixable?
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely. Remember that IBS is just a name, a term for symptoms that you have, right? So this is what I loathe, that people go to their doctors. They're like, I have bloat, indigestion, gas, and their doctor's just like, oh, it's IBS. And they're like,
seriously, like, that's what happened to me. I literally had to like go to a GI doctor and I was like, dude, like, I'm not good. And he's like, well, like, you're just constipated, you know, like you don't have, he actually told me, he was like, you don't have SIBO, which was cool. Cause like when I went to like my doctor, they're like, yeah, you probably have SIBO, like totally. And then I went to the GI
you get a
specialist.
breath test?
No, they just told me that. And I was like, cool. Like now I'm like, oh, elimination diets. Oh, what do I need to not eat basically? But it's honestly probably all stress related as well. Looking back, like there isn't like one diet that's going to fix your symptoms, because like all of these things that affect your gut health, there's like sleep, exercise, stress, relationship stuff. So like all of these things and then all of these other factors compiled to this one like bloat, right? Like
Yeah, so that's why with Core Perform, what I do is it is a semi-elimination diet. So we do eliminate all the inflammation through your diet, but also work on those lifestyle factors. And then we slowly reintroduce foods week by week. So maybe we do a FODMAP category one week, maybe we do histamines another week. We really pick and choose depending on the symptoms that you're experiencing. And then we reintroduce and we build out the most inclusive diet as possible. Things like low FODMAP, things like keto, they are not meant to be long-term. They are meant to be short-term tools used in the presence of a professional to prevent deficiency and nutrient deficiency and further complications of disease.
And it's interesting because I'm literally about to give a lecture on like different types of diets and is there really a best diet. And I think it just goes back to the overall thing is like the diet that works for me isn't going to work for you. And like if you can sustain and you feel good on that, like cool, like keep doing that.
Yeah.
Just because it works for you, it may not work for me. I may not even like it. So like,
And
I'm
it's
gonna do
so hard to do alone too. I have another registered dietitian. I have registered dietitians come to me for help with their gut health because just like a doctor, there's a gut health doctor, there is a heart doctor,
it.
there's an eye doctor. Like just like that, there's the same thing with RDs. Like I specifically specialize in gut health. So I have a lot of dietitians come to me and they're like, Dasha, I've tried to do low FODMAP. I'm a dietitian. I get it. Like I know how to do it. And I'm like, trust me, like you really can't do this alone, and it's not going to be just one diet. This is why I created Core Perform, is because it's so inclusive to really get to the root cause,
Right.
pinpoint that, eliminate it, and really get a holistic kind of sense.
Well, like also with like, let's say like you want to lose body fat, right? And like for me, I'm pretty like educated. I know all the skills, I know all the science, all that stuff to take me to my goal. And sure, I could coach myself, but there's something about that outside opinion, that outside professional coming in and saying, hey, this is what you need to do. Because like for like you, like if you had all these issues and you tried to coach yourself, it's like, okay, there's emotion, there's questioning of your own ability. Like when somebody is telling you what to do and you not only like understand that, that can like help you comply, number one, and two, you don't really have to second guess yourself either.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you're educated on like all this stuff, like it's totally worth it to invest in someone else to help you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Diet, again, same gist, right? Just that chronic inflammation causing decreased gut motility, everything like that. This is a borrowed from another lecture, but if you guys want free recipes on gut friendly treats or anything, you can find them on my website. I do have a free Facebook group that you can join, and I do like live sessions. So like macronutrient percentages for hypothalamic amenorrhea. What about seed cycling? Things like that. We go over, and you can ask whatever questions you'd like. I'm also releasing a gut healthy protein powder that is optimized for protein synthesis. So it'll be 3 ingredients, plant-based, so you can actually digest it, but without the bloat that can give you. But I optimize the amino acid ratio so that you only need 1 scoop versus 2. So it's just as effective as whey.
Could you like go through this like the competitors documents? So like
Yeah.
why would I not want to why would I not want to buy like the organic protein, because that's at Costco or the store. So like when you go to a protein, like what makes a protein good for like gut health, and like why are these things bad? So not bad, but like what could cause
Why do they
problems
affect?
with these things? Yeah, why would they
Right.
affect?
So first of all, we can start with whey. Even in isolate, I've seen people like react so poorly to them. Most of them also have xanthan gum in them or some sort of gum or artificial sweeteners. All of those will change and modulate your gut. And I say that loosely because everything you put in your mouth, whether it be broccoli, whether it be a cookie, will affect your gut health. It will change the composition of your gut microbiome. That is just what happens whenever we put food in our body, because different bacteria feed on different things. So when we think about it that way, we have to also understand that whey protein, there are studies on this. Each whey protein has its own virome depending on the actual cows that it comes from, the manufacturing process, etc. So that's why you'll see like some proteins it still might be an isolate, but you might be reacting to one isolate versus the other. I get rid of both of that. I say I don't want your virome of your cow in me. I'm instead going to choose a plant-based source. Now we go into plant-based sources and we know that, well, they're filled with heavy metals because any sort of greens powder, which we can talk about too, greens powders, any sort of plant proteins, they're all filled with heavy metals just because, again, naturally that's what they're found in plants. And when we reduce them into powdered form, we're just concentrating it all into one source. So that's one thing I make sure that it's heavy metal tested. The next thing I say is no added sugar. We know sugar is inflammatory. Why would we add that to a gut healthy protein powder, right? Artificial flavors and artificial sweeteners, same thing. They can be contaminated with things like gluten, which is fine for the average Joe, but a lot of people now are kind of reacting to these things. So making sure there's no artificial flavors, artificial sweeteners. Maybe you're sensitive to something like erythritol, a sugar alcohol. Those ones cause huge bloat in the GI. Then we have the gum section as well. Xanthan gum. I've heard horror stories of people adding a teaspoon of xanthan gum to their protein ice cream and ending up in the ER.
Wow, ER?
Yeah.
Wow, I used to do xanthan gum ice cream with the protein, and man, every time I ate it, okay, I agree, I look like a balloon, and it's like,
It's
why?
painful.
It hurts.
Yeah. So any sort of protein that has that gunk in it, like, no, I don't want to try it. Like, maybe it's fine, but like, I don't want that long term in my body, right? We're athletes. We rely on these on a day-to-day basis. Like, am I really going to suscept myself to chronic low-grade inflammation every single day? Right? Like, why
Right.
choose that? So I also made sure it was made in the USA because I want to make sure it's the purest of pure ingredients and support the US. I optimized it for digestion because I'm making sure that it does not have all these like filler ingredients. It doesn't have probiotics. There's this company called Nuzest, I think, that has this gut health protein.
Uh-huh.
It has probiotics in it, and it leaves every single one of my clients running to the bathroom with diarrhea in like 10 minutes. And I'm like, all right, this is not a gut healthy supplement. This is just like,
If you want to fix constipation, man, like sometimes you just gotta take the protein powder, right?
literally, like, what is this nonsense? So I also added that it was created by a registered dietitian, so you know it's a trusted source that it comes from. So that's what my protein's going to be. It'll be launching within the next month or two, so hopefully you guys can get a chance to see it. This link up here just adds you to the list because Amazon only allows me to put in like 100 units at a time. So I actually can only like tell certain people at certain times. It's going to be crazy, but
So weird.
yeah, if you want to make sure you get a golden ticket, just go to this site. And then if you guys have questions, this is my email, my Instagram. I post so much information on my Instagram.
It does.
You will be bound to find something that's interesting to you.
But yeah, I guess in the last lecture and just from different people, I've got different questions, I guess, from different people to ask you. And I'm kind of curious too. So one person was like, hey, like I have a healthy donut. They said healthy. I don't know what that means. Um, before I work out, and I just always feel bad. And then they said they have the same inflammation effect from a banana. So I mean, honestly, like thinking about something that's in healthy things, I think a ton of fiber, a ton of insoluble artificial sweeteners. And then I also think in a banana, it could be the fiber, honestly. Like maybe your body doesn't break down the banana very well. So honestly, like I would recommend like a whole food source that's not full of like a bunch of fiber, like a non-complex carb, maybe.
Yeah, you could even try swapping for maybe a different digestible fruit source. Bananas are, again, this is why I do core perform, I kid you not, is to identify those food sensitivities because it's going to be something in the banana. It might be it's probably not the pectins, but it probably is the fibers. You also have to remember that well, pectin is a fiber, but you have to remember that banana is one of those brat diet. If you've ever had diarrhea, been sick with the stomach bug, you'll know that you need to start the brat diet. So the brat diet is banana, rice, apples, and toast, right? To bind up that diarrhea. So bananas are notorious for causing that binding effect. And maybe that's why you feel kind of like you can't digest it that well, is because it's doing that in your GI. And then same thing with the donut or whatever it is. It's
Probably like
probably a sugar.
fiber.
Yeah, it's probably a sugar alcohol or another like really weird amount of like insane amount of fiber that they're using. Could be something else. I would have to look at the ingredients.
Okay. And thank you. And another question is, especially for physique athletes dieting for a contest,
Mhm.
let's say, well, you're already in a calorie deficit, so you're already going to have like like increased stress on the gut, so you might be more susceptible to these inflammation type things. And then that way, like paying attention to what you're eating really matters. So I know we talked about fiber. So like, is there really, I'm going to use the term optimal, air quotes, amount of fiber to consume for an individual? Because I know fiber can be used as like a technique to make someone feel more full, especially when you're in a deficit.
So that's a good point. What I will say is that different people will be able to tolerate different amounts of fiber and different types of fiber. So there's soluble fiber, there's insoluble fiber. Insoluble fiber is that stuff that's kind of like the roughage of vegetables you can think of, and soluble fiber is that bulking agent that allows for stool to pass. So both of them are kind of bulking agents, but they work in a little bit different ways. So yes, both of them are fibers, so they may increase your satiety and may help you to stay fuller longer. However, you may need to decrease the amount of insoluble fibers in your diet and increase the amount of soluble fibers in your diet with something like a psyllium husk. That's what I use in my practice. That I also use if you're someone who struggles with a lot of diarrhea or are battling some sort of infection that's causing you to have diarrhea. Psyllium husk is really great to bind up your stool. But it also has that satiating effect and is known, soluble fiber is known to feed that good gut bacteria to produce those butyrates and all those short chain fatty acids.
Nice. So in terms of fiber, so you're saying you want to have like a mix of insoluble with soluble fiber.
Right. And that's how it's naturally found in vegetables, whole grains in your diet. It will be a mix of both. Some people just don't get enough of that. Like their ratio is a little off. Like they might do better with some less of this roughage, more of this. It all has to do with your gut motility, your hormones, all of the like medical things that are going on with you.
So yes, I would say it's like very individualized. But for somebody, let's say like, is there like a general like recommendation of like a fiber, like the amount of fiber like one should be taking like 20 grams, 30
Totally.
grams for like the amount of it, like calories?
Yeah. So there is. So it's 14 grams per 1,000 calories that you take in.
Okay. So like for like the average Joe, like let's say like over 20 would be a good goal. 20 grams per day.
Over 20, I like to say over 25. And then I like to say under around 40. So 25 to 40 usually is like a sweet spot for most people. Anything over that might cause some digestive distress. And then anything under might constipate you.
Yeah. So like if you're a person who's like always constipated, and you're in a calorie deficit, whatever, like it's definitely, I can see this as like being like an over fiber consumption. It's like you may be eating like too much things that like bind you up.
Yep,
Like
exactly. Because
bananas.
remember what I just talked about, the banana, apples, rice, and toast. So what do most dieters rely on? That rice, right?
White rice, yeah.
Yeah.
Not like bad, not gonna say bad, but like white rice, like obviously like contains like no additional nutrient benefits. I guess it's like going to like you're gonna intake it and it's gonna go right out the other side, I guess, without like
It
providing.
depends. It depends on the person. Rice is super easily digested too. So although it does bulk up, and like is easy on the stomach, it's easy on the stomach, which means that you can digest it pretty well. So it might be a good source. It might be a bad source. Maybe you're lacking a lot of nutrients and you need something that's starchier from a vegetable source, like a tuber or something.
Yeah, so you could even do like a protein, like a white rice, and then like get the fiber from a vegetable
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Interesting. And also, I just had one more quick question. So I know a lot of people rely on teas, like smooth moves at night, especially one of my students. This is totally for her. She asked me directly. So she's having like smooth moves every night to rely on digestion. So, number one, like, is this like, why is this good or bad? I don't know. And two, what is this really doing?
Okay. Don't worry, I'm not making faces at you. I'm making faces because I'm so sorry that you've fallen victim to smooth move. So smooth move should only be used short term, like one day. It is a laxative and it is does cause dependency. So that's probably why she can't stop now that she's on it, and she might need two smooth moves as the time goes on. So unfortunately, it does have something called senna leaf, and senna is often added if you do look at some supplements. Unfortunately, as well, in a lot of supplements like greens powders and stuff, to make people think that they're improving their digestion or they're detoxing, when in reality, they're just making them reliant on a laxative.
Oh no.
I
Wow.
know,
So
I know.
is it phenolate?
It's senna leaf. So it's a leaf that's a natural, so it's a natural tea, which is fine, but it is senna, which is a natural laxative.
Oh, so you'll see this in a lot of like water shedding pills too. So like again, like guys, like if you go, I tell people they're like, oh, so I should just get laxatives to fix my digestion. I go, absolutely not, because what are you doing when you literally push these things into your body? You are literally stripping your stomach of everything you've been literally trying to fix, right? So like if you're working on trying to fix your gut health, what are you doing? You're stripping it all out. You're literally just throwing it out into the toilet. You know?
It causes a lot of long-term issues. I have people come to me with like long-term laxative abuse, and it takes time. It is hard to get off of those things. Like your gut is just not functioning anymore at that point, and you really need to do so much work on a day-to-day basis in order to get it back. So please try and get off of it as fast as you can. Lower doses by half, etc. Email me, let's set up a consult. Like I can work through strategies to slowly wean you off of that as soon as you can.
Yeah, super interesting because, like, I also want to make another point. So, like, if you're a person who's just wanting to get into like macro tracking, so to say, like, especially like a few years ago, I remember it was really taking off, like, if it fits your macros, flexible dieting, like, although these approaches, like, let's say your goal is fat loss, place you in a calorie deficit, you see substantial results, your results could be a lot better if you know how to, number one, optimize like your like intake, like understand what you're eating and how this can impact your performance. Then also, like, again, your specialty, gut health. So it's a lot more than just a macro prescription. And like that's a huge thing for me, is like helping people, like, not only, okay, let's live a flexible dieting lifestyle, but let's also understand that what we eat can impact our performance, sleep, stomach, like all of the above. Like it's so much more than just a macro prescription. And I wish other coaches would understand that. Like, hey, like it's not just a macro game. Like teach your athlete how to eat. Like literally, like
Yeah.
so frustrating for me, especially as a coach. And like people come from other coaches and it's like, okay, like I'm gonna coach you, but I'm also gonna teach you a skill. Like take it with
Yeah.
you forever, please.
Right.
Crazy.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for having me. I hope this was enjoyable and helpful, and hope to see you guys soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dasha. You guys can find her on social media. She puts out a lot of amazing stuff at Dasha Fitness. And thank you guys so much. And I'll see you guys in the next lecture.